The Bipartisan Committee on Border Security has submitted a deal to President Trump. Should he sign it? Is it a good deal? We'll dive into the details and I'll let you know what I think the president should do. Also, a college journalist has written that it's okay for conservatives not to feel welcome on campus. We'll go into his writings, his stunning response, and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour.
And God bless the United States of America.
Okay, so there appears to be a deal on the table to keep the government open, which is scheduled to shut down on Friday. It comes from a 17-member committee, Republicans and Democrats, House and Senate, that were tasked with funding Department of Homeland Security, giving Trump his border wall, along with other border security enhancements and funding to keep the government going. So they came up with a deal. It looked like there was some progress over the weekend. Then all of a sudden, the Democrats threw in this poison pill saying that they wanted a cap or a reduction in the number of beds that ICE can use to house criminals. Trump said that was a no-go, so they kind of started from scratch. There was talk that there might be $2 billion for the wall included in this deal. Well, now all of a sudden, we have a deal on the table, and here's what President Trump had to say about it.
I'm not happy about it. It's not doing the trick, but I'm adding things to it. And when you add whatever I have to add, it's all going to happen where we're going to build a beautiful, big, strong wall that's not going to let criminals and traffickers and drug dealers and drugs into our country.
So let's dive into some of the details that brought about Trump's reaction. I'll put this up on the screen and we can go through it line by line. Here's some of the key points in this deal that's been presented to President Trump. $1.375 billion for physical barriers, which leads to 55 miles of new fencing. Border Patrol may use any current design but not concrete wall. Number of ICE detention beds is maintained at current level. There's no cap on detention beds, thus more funds could be used later for more beds. And $1.7 billion increase in overall DHS spending for technology, points of entry, security, customs, and so on. So those are some of the details. This is, we had a 35-day government shutdown because the Democrats said walls were immoral. They gave him no money. And now we're coming up to another shutdown, and here's what they gave. Sean Hannity has said it's a bad deal. Ann Coulter tweeted this just yesterday. She said, Trump talks a good game on the border wall, but it's increasingly clear he's afraid to fight for it. Call this his yellow New Deal. Now, Rush Limbaugh has come out and said it's a good deal. So, where do things stand? We saw what Trump, he doesn't like it. And here's my take on it. There's no way else to look at it except that this deal is a bad deal. And I'll sum up what Trump should do just in a quick sentence here is that he should sign the bill and reject the deal. And here's what I mean by that. This bill is bad. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I hadn't listened to Rush yet and see what he had to say. But, this is just bogus funding. The Border Patrol agents have asked for 230 miles of strategically placed border wall, border barriers. This gives funding for 55 miles of it. It's 24% of what Trump has asked for. But rather than tying himself to this deal, what he should do is let it stand for what it really is, and that is a deal brokered in Congress between the Republicans in Congress and the Democrats in Congress. And the fact that Nancy Pelosi recently came out and said there will be zero money for a wall. The Democrats have come out and said it's immoral, and now there's $1.375 billion, shows that, okay, we got some money out of Congress. That's part of the package. I'll sign that bill, but my deal is with the American people, and my deal is that we need $5.7 billion for 230 miles of border barriers, and I'm going to get it done. Now, CNN has put out a piece on where some of that money could come from, and I just want to go over some of those options so you can see what the president has at his disposal, some easier to get through than others, and some don't even require stating a national crisis or national emergency. So let's take a look at at some of these options from CNN. He can access Treasury forfeiture funds, which is around $680 million. It wouldn't require the president to declare a national emergency and includes unobligated funds from participating agencies that can be used to support law enforcement activities, which this would be. He could use U.S. Code 284 to divert some Pentagon funds for counter-narcotics, and that amounts to up to $2 billion, and it may not require the president to declare national emergency. U.S. Code 2808 to gain access to military construction funds. That's up to $3.6 billion. That would require the president to declare a national emergency, and it would require the use of the military. And there's also U.S. Army Corps Civil Works funds through U.S. Code 2293, which is up to $3 billion. So there are a lot of avenues that he could address. And also, Senator Cruz has just put out a bill saying that we should use some of the El Chapo funds that the prosecutors want to get, something like $14 billion. The president only wants 5.7. Use some of those to fund the wall. So that's what the president should do here. He should sign this bill, but say, my deal is with the American people, and we're going to go for $5.7 billion. We're going to get 230 miles of border wall to secure the areas that are most in danger, the most overrun from drug dealers and sex traffickers and other criminals. This is what he should do. The bill by itself is a bad deal. And what frustrates me is I doubt that if we had a Republican House and Senate that it would be any better, because they weren't able to get this done in the 2 years that we controlled everything. So take what you can get from the Democrats, who had said that these immoral walls will get zero funding. He got $1.375 billion from it. Take it, move on, but tell the American people it's not some down payment, as the Republicans are phrasing. It's just the part that we could get from the Democrats. We're going to fund the rest by X, Y, and Z and move on from there. So I think that's what the president should do. It's a bad deal. Sign the bill. Put your deal in front of the American people. It's a good one. It'll keep us safe, and move on from there. Next, I want to talk about this story that this guy in college, he's at Washington University in St. Louis. He's a staff writer for the Student Life newspaper, and he wrote a column that says it's okay if conservatives don't feel welcome on campus. Now, before I get into what he writes, I had an interesting discussion with my daughter the other day on the differences, the generational differences, how, say, the Great Generation or Silent Generation acts compared to baby boomers, compared to Gen X and millennials and Gen Z, and how they tend to take the opposite characteristics of their previous generation. So her point was that some of the messed upness of millennials is our fault, the Gen Xers, because we coddled and didn't want them to go through some of the struggles that we went through. And in part, she's right. I mean, my father died when I was 15 years old, and I would never wish that kind of life on someone if they didn't have to go through single parenthood, all the sacrifices, all the opportunities missed, all the events that you couldn't go to. I want my kids to enjoy that. But there was one part of it that didn't come up in our discussion. We had to end it, which is the millennials are a generation that's different from any other in that they are the generation that from birth has been totally immersed in left-wing group thought. If you think about it, every major mode of influence in society is controlled by the left. And I'm talking about the news media, Hollywood or entertainment. I'm talking about education, both elementary and higher education. And I'm talking about technology and social media. When you're thinking about Facebook and YouTube and Google and Apple and Twitter, they're all controlled by the left. And that is the mentality that this generation has grown up in. It's a generation that's gone from Christmas vacation to winter break and other examples like that, because you can't offend anyone. And it's just this left-wing mantra, this ideology that's getting shoved down this generation's throat. So it's no wonder that people like this emerge and write this stuff, because this guy, Sean Lundergan, that writes for the Student Life, he's probably one of those that's responded to the surveys where millennials like socialism more than capitalism. But let's dive into what he had to say, because it's really interesting. Here's part of his paper or his column that showed up in the student newspaper. As we emerge from another bad State of the Union address from an even worse president, it seems appropriate to reflect on the young members of the ideological movement that created him. Across the country, at schools like ours, college right-wingers say they face isolation because of their beliefs. Now, it shows right there his limited knowledge, because the right-wing movement did not create President Trump. President Trump was created by a populist uproar at the establishment. That, more than anything, is what got him elected. It was certainly not a right-wing movement, and President Trump is certainly not a right-wing conservative in that kind of sense. So he went on to write some of this. Rather than stifling debate, dismissing unproductive conservative ideas can open up opportunity for meaningful discussion. That means if you get rid of the conservatives, you'll actually have good discussion. It's a logical fact of living in human society that not every idea is fit for the public forum. We have only so many hours in the day. In general, it takes for granted that some belief systems are either unnecessary or detrimental to serious discourse that's especially important in an academic environment. So it went on and on like that. And of course, there was backlash. The vice chancellor of the university actually put in an op-ed, and here's part of what she had to say. On behalf of the entire administration, I want to state emphatically, as I do frequently, that it is not okay for any student to feel unwelcome at Washington University, no matter a student's political leanings, background, race, gender, sexual orientation, or other identity. So Lundergan, actually, because of all of this, he wrote a follow-up piece, what he called a clarification. And I just want to give you one little part of that. Here's what he wrote. He said, I would never suggest that certain voices should be silenced, which is exactly what he said. As I said in the original piece, we must allow conservatives to discuss their beliefs. I think part of the uproar is a result of the brevity of the piece. 700 words isn't enough space to give context to every reader. Most columns, that's a standard length. If you can't make your point in 700 words, you've got a problem, not the readers, not the conservatives. But this is the group thought that goes on out there, folks. This is what we see day after day after day. And he pointed out in his paper that some 70 plus or close to 80% of the people on that college campus identify as liberal. Only 8% identify as conservatives. And this is not an isolated incident. We see this over and over again. And it's because from the moment of birth, they are raised in this left-wing philosophy. And we see it everywhere. And it's up to us to do something about it. So, folks, we're out of time for today. I just wanted to leave you with that. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Thank you for subscribing. Please tell your friends about it. I'm Bobby Eberly. This is a 13-Minute News Hour.